Lady on the train, lady on the train. I can see it through the frames. Can you be my dame? Lady on the train, lady on the train. Train, lady on the train, lady in the train. Could you be my dame? I can see it in your frames. I can see it through the range. Why you acting strange? Why the sudden change? Why you switching lanes? Why you playing games? I was switching face. No, I was switching names.
Yes. Welcome to my ramblings on both South Korea and North Korea. I left behind the beautiful green steppes of Mongolia and came to Seoul. Located in the northwestern part of South Korea on the Han River is located this monstrosity, home to 25 million people, making it the 5th most populous city in the world. Walking around and travelling around is fascinating. You've got Gangnam, the district home to none other than Gangnam Style. You have beautiful mountains, you have big crazy palaces, you have tiny narrow streets illuminated by garishly strong lights advertising everything. You have the South Korean kids wearing some of the coolest outfits you've ever seen. And then just 50 kilometers to the north, you have the demilitarised zone, also known as the DMZ, a heavily militarised zone full of huge barbed wire fences. And the interior, which is 4 kilometers wide by 250 kilometers long, is littered with landmines. This area separates South Korea from its reclusive communist sibling North Korea, sat above, which has fascinated me ever since my trip several years ago. Although full of landmines, the interior of the DMZ is actually sat untouched by humans for the past 65 years. And sort of birthed out of the tragedies of conflict has been a real source of beauty, where the forest has reclaimed the agricultural lands which once dominated this region. But this place is actually such an anomaly. Try and think of another place which is just completely devoid of human attention and has managed to protect itself from the destruction for human development. It's crazy, and this is, bar the occasional wildfire from sort of landmines setting off, it just hasn't been touched. And this fascinated me to no end. So I decided that I wanted to learn more about it. So I went and met up with Kim Sung-ho and his team from the DMZ Ecology Research Institute. The landscape inside the DMZ varies massively, from mountains to wetlands. And it boasts abundant biodiversity more than any region in the whole nation. And it's also of international importance as well, such that it's one of the last well-preserved temperate climate regions left on Earth. And obviously a place like this must have a lot of biodiversity. And it's said to be home to 5,000 species of flora and fauna, including leopards, lynx, possibly tigers, and recently a black Asiatic bear was spotted wandering through. It's also a final refuge for 50% of Korea's endangered species, including the red crowned crane, which has graced Asian artwork throughout history basically. But its population here now only numbers 1,000, one of the last remaining populations on Earth. It's important to remember that this area was born completely by accident, and that its ability to thrive is basically down to bad relations on the peninsula. And that means that any improvements in peace and in relations threatens this area massively. The threats are as such. There's been a road planned from the south to the north to the joint sort of industrial area there. 3 walking routes and an art museum have been planned on the southern side or have come to fruition now. And also the idea of peace bridges and a peace city are actually on the board, but are sort of uncertain as the optimism about peace ebbs amid a sort of flurry of North Korean missile tests. And conservationists worry that it isn't going to stop here, and that factories and industry are sort of just on the horizon. But the Institute are working and are doing surveys in the CCZ every week. And this is the civilian control zone, sort of a buffer area on the south side of the Korean DMZ, which has restricted access but is sort of opened up for agriculture for the people in the local villages. And sort of from these surveys for the past 15 years, they've got evidence of unparalleled biodiversity in the region, which really helps Kim sort of battle for the protection of this area in policy debates. and he's already been successful in stopping the completion of one road, which would have fragmented the habitats inside massively. One of the other threats in the DMZ is the removal of some of the million landmines, which is happening slowly but surely. Kim feels that these are best just left in the ground, and that any attempts to remove them will just disturb the fragile ecosystem which lives within. But really, they have to be removed if we want peace on the peninsula. And this is exactly the problem in this debate, that there is always going to be a trade-off. And that if we're looking forward to peace and maybe reunification, then we're probably going to lose one of the last wild areas in Korea and species of international importance. Although Kim doesn't feel this will work, and I feel slightly inclined to agree with him, there are efforts looking to reconcile the two. And actually, conservation is seen as a key ingredient towards cooperation and sort of improving relations on the peninsula, especially with the designation of Ramsar sites in sort of the wetland areas which hope to protect the cranes. Interestingly, North Korea has actually designated 2 of their own Ramsar sites recently, sort of showing an acknowledgement of the importance of conserving their natural resources. South Korea are also looking at expanding some of their biosphere reserves, which have recently been announced and cover swaths of the CCZ, and they're sort of hoping to push these into the DMZ, sort of as a gesture of peace, which should hopefully stand there as a token even throughout unification. But this whole thing is a massively complicated one, and I find it incredibly sad that there even has to be a trade-off in the first place. But we can look at the good news and look at it for what it is, and that's the fact that nature has taken over what used to live there and has shown that it can thrive and produce incredible amounts of biodiversity and be a home to so many endangered species. And this is really important, looking towards what some scientists claim is what we need, with 50% of the world for us and 50% of the world designated just for nature so it can reclaim what is there. But I really hope they do manage to figure it out, and because of course we want relations to improve, but we also want conservation. So we just have to see. Boom. Ramblings out.